a wealthy man's arrogance brought him to ruin. Will he find the true purpose of his life? Before we begin the story, I'd love to know where you're watching our videos from. Victor was a man of immense wealth, living in a grand mansion with sprawling gardens and the finest luxuries money could buy. He attended exclusive events, drove the latest cars, and carried himself with an air of superiority. His wealth was not just his pride but his identity. However, this opulence came at a cost. Victor treated people as tools, dismissing their feelings and belittling their struggles. One day, at a company meeting, Victor's arrogance was on full display as he dismissed a junior employee's suggestion, smirking, "Stick to what you know. This is out of your league." This was Victor in his element, untouchable and unbothered. Walking through the park one morning, Victor encountered Henry, a beggar sitting quietly with a small cardboard sign that read, "Seeking kindness, not coins." Intrigued yet amused, Victor stopped. "You expect sympathy for sitting there and doing nothing?" Victor sneered. A small crowd gathered as Victor publicly mocked Henry. Henry, unfazed, looked up and simply said, "Life has a way of balancing the scales." His words were calm but carried a weight that lingered with Victor, though he dismissed it as nonsense at the time. Back at his office, Victor was gearing up for the deal of the decade, a merger that would cement his empire's dominance. He walked into the negotiation room brimming with overconfidence, ignoring the advice of his team to tread carefully. The deal collapsed spectacularly. Victor's arrogance alienated the other party, and soon after, the news spread like wildfire. Investors pulled out, and his company's stock plummeted. The once unshakable empire began to crumble. Lawsuits followed, creditors came knocking, and the media tore him apart. Victor's fall from grace had begun. In the months that followed, Victor lost everything. His mansion was repossessed, his luxury cars auctioned off, and his high society friends vanished. He found himself living in a modest apartment, his name a shadow of what it once was. One evening, sitting alone in his empty living room, Victor stared at an old photo of himself at a gala. He realized how hollow his life had been, built on superficial connections and fleeting glory. Unable to escape his past, Victor began to revisit the places where he had wronged others. He walked past the office where his arrogance had humiliated colleagues and the park where he had mocked Henry. Each step was a reminder of the pain he had caused. One night, standing by his window, Victor whispered to himself, "I need to make this right." Victor returned to the park, hoping to find Henry. Days turned into weeks, but he kept searching. Finally, one afternoon, he spotted the familiar figure sitting under a tree. Victor approached cautiously. "Henry, I was wrong. I hurt you and many others. I'm sorry." Henry looked at him, his expression soft. "It takes courage to face your mistakes," he said. "But redemption lies in what you do next." Their conversation that day was transformative. Henry's words, simple yet profound, ignited a change in Victor. He left the park with a renewed purpose. Inspired by Henry's wisdom, Victor used what little remained of his resources to start a foundation. It began modestly, a small soup kitchen and a shelter. But over time, it grew into a network of support for the homeless, the hungry, and the marginalized. Victor worked tirelessly, not as a leader but as a servant, connecting with people in ways he never had before. The man who once sought wealth above all now found joy in the smiles of those he helped. In the final scene, Victor stands amidst a bustling community center, surrounded by people whose lives he had touched. A child hands him a drawing that says, "Thank you, Mr. Victor." Victor smiles, the weight of his past finally lifted. True wealth, he realized, was never in possessions but in the relationships and kindness that endure.